What should have been one of the most exciting chapters in Jujutsu Kaisen instead often feels like a sprawling, overcomplicated detour. The Culling Games arc, following the emotionally charged Shibuya Incident, promised high stakes, deadly strategy, and groundbreaking fights. But in execution, it falls short in ways that many fans and critics have noticed. What we ended up with is an arc that is ambitious in scale but uneven in delivery, sacrificing narrative focus, emotional resonance, and character development in favor of sheer size. At first glance, the Culling Games seem like a perfect setup for tension. The games, orchestrated by Kenjaku, create a nationwide survival scenario where sorcerers and civilians alike must navigate a deadly landscape of curses, combat, and strategy. The stakes are clear, lives hang in the balance, and every decision carries consequence. This sounds thrilling on paper, and indeed, the arc delivers some memorable fights and creative curse techniques. Certain moments, like the displays of Naoya's or Maki's abilities, are visually striking and have even gone viral among the fanbase. But these flashes of brilliance are few and far between, overshadowed by the arc's structural and pacing issues. One of the most glaring problems with the Culling Games is its pacing. Unlike the Shibuya Incident, which balanced multiple threads with tight narrative focus, this arc often feels like it's stretching for content. Battles drag on for dozens of chapters with minimal narrative payoff. Side plots and filler fights interrupt the central narrative, making it difficult for the reader to feel sustained tension. When you have a story of this magnitude, every scene should serve the plot, develop characters, or reinforce thematic stakes. But far too often, the Culling Games meander. Some fights are extended solely to showcase new curse techniques, which, while visually interesting, don't deepen the story. This creates a frustrating disconnect between the scale of events and the emotional impact they're meant to carry. The structure and narrative clarity are also major issues. The arc hops constantly between characters, locations, and side plots. While a multi-threaded narrative can be effective, here it becomes confusing. By trying to show everything at once, the story loses its center. Key developments are often buried under less important skirmishes, and readers may struggle to understand who matters most or what the ultimate stakes are at any given moment. For example, the focus sometimes shifts to new Culling Game participants who receive little introduction or development, leaving their fights feeling hollow and disconnected. The sheer number of characters, new sorcerers, cursed spirits, and civilians, creates narrative noise that drowns out meaningful storytelling. Another major weakness is the emotional impact, or rather, the lack thereof. The Shibuya Incident was lauded for its gut-wrenching stakes and character moments, but the Culling Games rarely reaches that level. Because the arc stretches over so many chapters and spreads attention so thinly across dozens of different characters, no single event hits as hard as it should. Even when a character is in genuine danger, the audience connection is often diluted by constant interruptions from unrelated fights or rule explanations. The result is a story that is thrilling in concept, but emotionally distant in practice. Character development too suffers under this arc's weight. Major characters like Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara often feel sidelined, with their growth relegated to brief, scattered moments, or not at all in Nobara's case. While side characters occasionally shine, such as Maki's impressive displays, these moments feel like isolated sparks rather than part of a coherent developmental arc. Supporting characters are introduced, battle briefly, and then disappear without meaningful resolutions. This approach leaves the audience invested in a large number of players, but none of them with the emotional gravity that they deserve. The arc's length and breadth create the illusion of depth, but it's depth without an emotional anchor. The rules and mechanics of the Culling Games contribute to the problem. While complex rules can create strategic intrigue, here they often become a burden. The audience is forced to track intricate curse technique interactions, game territories, and scoring systems, often at the expense of narrative flow. Instead of feeling like high-stakes strategy, it frequently reads like a confusing rulebook. For a story so dependent on tension and stakes, bogging down the reader with mechanics undermines the very suspense the arc is trying to generate. Moreover, the arc's tone and stakes feel inconsistent. Some battles are portrayed as deadly and consequential, yet the sheer number of participants and repeated near misses diminish the sense of danger. With so many characters surviving extended encounters without clear consequences, the tension that should drive a survival game is diluted. The narrative tries to evoke fear, suspense, and moral ambiguity, but it often falls flat because the structure prevents any individual event from landing with impact. Even when the arc attempts to explore philosophical or thematic questions, morality, strategy, survival, it does so unevenly. The Culling Games could have been a profound meditation on the ethics of survival under extreme conditions, but these themes are frequently overshadowed by action and exposition. The series teases existential stakes, but with so many subplots vying for attention, the arc struggles to communicate any single, cohesive thematic statement. Despite these criticisms, it would be unfair to say that the Culling Games has nothing to offer. The arc's ambition and scale are impressive, and there are standout moments of creativity, especially in battle choreography and curse technique design. It expands on the universe in ways previous arcs could not, introducing new locations, rules, and factions that all deepen the lore. But ambition alone is not enough. Without tight pacing, emotional resonance, or clear narrative focus, these elements feel scattershot rather than integral. In the end, the Culling Games arc is a lesson in ambition outpacing execution. Its long stretches of uneven pacing, structural confusion, and diluted emotional stakes prevent it from achieving the intensity and resonance of earlier arcs. While it contains flashes of brilliance in its fights, techniques, and world building, these are undermined by the arc's sprawling length and lack of focus. The narrative becomes more about quantity than quality, leaving the audience fatigued and disengaged at times. For fans and critics alike, the verdict is mixed. Some enjoyed the extended battles and experimentation with characters and curse techniques. Others see it as disappointment after the narrative tightness and emotional impact of Shibuya. What should have been a high point for Jujutsu Kaisen ends up as a sprawling experiment. Interesting and ambitious, but ultimately frustrating in its execution. The Culling Games demonstrate that scale and ambition are not substitutes for careful storytelling. Without a cohesive narrative, emotional investment, and purposeful pacing, even a high-stakes survival arc can feel exhausting and disconnected. It is a reminder that no amount of flashy fights or complex rules can replace a story that feels cohesive, character-driven, and emotionally grounded. JJK fans can still enjoy individual moments, the standout fights, surprising techniques, and glimpses of character growth. But as an arc, the Culling Games leaves much to be desired. Ambition is admirable, but execution is everything. And here, ambition overwhelms the story rather than enhancing it. But that's all for now. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.